Welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we're going to be discussing The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode number 2. If you've not hit the sub button, please do so. We'll be doing these reviews every single week. And let's start with the fact that pretty much everything you said, Larry, last week that we were trying not to spoil, they went ahead and put it in this very episode. I mean, we got Isaiah Bradley, the Patriot, Flag Smasher, U.S. Agent. We even Battlestar, which we didn't count on. Zemo, the Power Brokers. Pretty much everything that we discussed is, in fact, in this episode, will be a major part of this entire series, I'm assuming. There's 4 episodes left. We have a lot to cover, but just the fact that they went ahead and gave us all that up front, which is much better as far as pacing, I guess, than what they did over at WandaVision. But WandaVision had more episodes. This has less episodes. So I guess that's, it's a little different in terms of how they had to pace it. But what did you think about all that? Were you like, holy shit, I was right?
Yeah, that was surprising that I was not only right, but right about episode 2. And like you said, that puts me in a place where it's like, okay, they've got all that out of the way. So what happens next? Now that we're doing all the things I thought we were going to do, we're about to go see Zemo. And, to our credit, I think we did mention Battlestar, but we wrote him off. We're like, there's no way we're going to see Battlestar in this, Like, so I know, like, even if we didn't mention it in the last episode, I know we discussed it and, just kind of thought that was such an obscure character that he wouldn't be there. But yeah, it's pretty surprising, and I think it's a good sign for this show. But it's the way Marvel's kind of trying to mix things up, and I think this is better than some of the other ways. It's better than pulling a Ralph Boner, than throwing us off that way.
Don't remind me.
Right? It's addressing it's like, okay, yeah, these things you're familiar with from the book, they're going to happen, but how do you feel about this if it happens already and we take the story even further? I feel that's better. Address it, get it out there, and now we can move on to newer and better things. And I'm very excited to see the last character that we saw mentioned, what we all knew was coming, Zemo. It segues to that in a very neat way.
My biggest gripe is, and we talked about it before that, but I'm not even going to mention some of that stuff just yet. Kevin Feige said that all of these things aren't going to tie into the cinematic universe, which makes me not give a shit about this even more, because you show these 2 characters that if they were going to be like, Falcon and White Wolf or Winter Soldier, or whatever they're going to call him going forward, this to me, just like with WandaVision, would have been great had these things mattered enough to tie into the cinematic universe. To me, it's great. You're building backstory with these characters, or even if you were going to have WandaVision season 2, or Winter Soldier, or Falcon Winter Soldier season 2, and just keep these characters more on the Disney Plus universe instead of the cinematic universe. To me, that would have been great. You just carry these stories on. You just keep building up Zemo. You build up, you're building up these characters. You build up the conflict with, Agatha Harkness. You build up these relationships and you build up these nemesis, but now it just doesn't matter. And that is my gripe, is that we know Zemo's coming. He is a great villain. He is a great manipulator, but now he's going to manipulate it for what? 3 episodes? 4 episodes? And I have a real issue with what they're doing with the TV show universe, even though I'm enjoying the action. I'm enjoying the story building, but I feel like it's not going to go anywhere, and it makes me care less.
So you said said that these series will not affect the movies at all?
Roughly. So a couple months ago, Kevin Feige was clarifying his vision for the future of the MCU, and he said it. This is almost his exact quote, basically. In his mind, there are the movies, and then there's everything else, and his focus is the movies. So I think some people had a few opinions. There was a lot of discussion after he did this interview as like, what exactly was he meaning? But it sounds like if you dig into the interview, it's not hard to find. It was literally a couple months ago. Me and Spencer read it, read the whole thing. But basically, his focus is the films. He wants everyone to be able to go into those movies and enjoy those films for what they are. Therefore, he's not necessarily looking for you to watch, 90 shows in order to be able to understand the films. So, does that mean that these characters won't pop up in the movies? They might, but you could. It sounds to me like he wants to make it where
everything that happens in the show doesn't matter.
it doesn't really, because take a look at WandaVision. At the end of the day, outside of you introduced a new villain in Agatha Harkness, but you really didn't give us much about her. So she could just pop up in a movie. She's a witch. That's all you have to say. You don't have to go into any details. Scarlet Witch, she tapped into her power. That's all you have to say. In other words, the events of that series arguably could be covered in 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and that seems to be what he wants out of these shows.
I guess I kind of understand that because, otherwise it does make certain movies hard to write when you have to go back and look at all this lore, like that's, just building year after year. But I mean, I guess I understand it if in the sense we want to keep Marvel movies, as we referred to them in the past, the barbecue movies.
One more point, real quick. I'm sorry. The whole Black Widow situation. So, and this completely plays into that. There was a lot of concern when they were moving the dates around because people made the assumption, myself included, that you had to see the Black Widow and the Falcon and Winter Soldier. There would be some connective tissue. Well, then when they started moving the dates, all of a sudden we're like, well, they moved this one back. So now we're watching Falcon first. Do you not have to see Black Widow? And then the answer came out, no, you don't. And so that, I think, is what sparked a lot of this conversation and asking Kevin Feige, where we thought all these things were laid out in a very specific order. Now we're seeing that they're not. It doesn't really matter. The film's order matter, but the shows don't necessarily. And so that's when he sort of clarified. His exact words, there are the films, and then he said there's everything else. That was his quote.
Okay, yeah, I guess that could be worrying then, because you can never have anything in any of the shows that may reveal something from one of the movies, or
Yes, pisses me off so bad.
Well, it answers a lot of our questions we had with WandaVision, where at the end I was like, a lot of the characters' motivations were very shallow, which is easy to explain real quickly in a line of dialogue,
Well, and it makes it to where Mephisto still could be the next big villain, but it doesn't tie anything into WandaVision. Zemo, it's great. He could be, this super helpful guy in the next wave of the movies, but his motivations in this aren't going to matter. It's not really going to tie in. And that is my entire beef with these series, is that now it makes me not want to watch the show because it's not going to matter. I want to watch these shows. The movies are great because they are fun, but now you want me to be invested in these shows, but it's not the same. I don't want to invest 6 hours of time for something that's not going to matter or tie in, whereas a movie I can watch, in a couple hours and it's fun.
We were supposed to have seen Black Widow and I believe Shang-Chi before WandaVision came out, before Falcon and Winter Soldier came out, before Loki came out. Well, like I said, Black Widow got pushed. Well, all those shows will be out before Black Widow. So yeah, the order clearly doesn't matter, and it is a little concerning, because like I said, I think they'll be able to introduce some characters. They won't have to do maybe necessarily origin films for certain characters anymore, but in terms of a massive, it goes even to, we keep saying, oh, Secret Invasion is going to be a show, and then we're like, well, the Miss Marvel show is going to tie into that. What was the other? Like all these shows are going to tie around Secret Invasion, and then we realized, oh shit, all that's going to be dedicated to Disney Plus. All those story arcs. I don't think they're really going to touch the films.
Well, and we've said it during WandaVision, Battlestar, U.S. Agent, like all these characters are East Coast versus West Coast Avengers. So now that would get me excited that they're setting up all these other characters for something that could be completely dedicated to the Disney Plus universe. You basically have West Coast Avengers be the Disney Plus universe. But it makes me feel like Wanda, Bucky, Falcon, all these characters, you're basically just using them to set up these other characters. And that's the part that's frustrating to me, because you have these big name characters like Wanda, but you really only have her to set up her kids. You have these big names like Bucky and Falcon, but you're really only using them to set up U.S. Agent and Battlestar.
And think about even the setup of, and this is how they wrote it. The way they set up her kids, you really didn't need to see that. In other words, because they exist in another universe or whatever. So you could just have her in a movie and she's like, hey, I have kids in another fucking universe. And I want to get them.
Well, yeah, and that's my thing. If the way he stated it that is that, there's the, like, how are they even going to display that if he's saying that, the television universe is going to be completely separate from the movie universe? Because if you want people who haven't watched the shows to watch that, are you even going to reference those kids, or are we going to get a lot of exposition about them, or that Wanda wants a family and you just don't know why in the movies? Is that the expectation? I don't know. That gets kind of iffy.
It reminds me with comics when you'd be in the middle of an event or a major story arc, and then they would announce an event that's not going to happen for 6 months. But based on the announcement, you've spoiled the current thing. You know what I mean? You'd be like, why the hell should I finish this? Because I know who's going to make it out, and I know where things are headed. Yeah, I don't know, man.
It does. Yeah, it does kind of ruin that, unless somehow, and it kind of makes it harder for it to be this. And, some people were expecting it, especially with how well WandaVision did, and, how good the first episode of this was. Kind of makes it hard for the television universe to hold itself together. And because some people were saying, like, much like the Mandalorian, it's like it could get to the point where you like the television show much more than you like the movies, because I got to say, my favorite Star Wars property is the Mandalorian, and that's a show. But like if you took that show and you were like, all right, you can't touch on Luke or Jedi or this or that because we don't want you to mess with the movies. I mean, I guess it would still be good, but if you couldn't touch on certain characters from the Empire, if you couldn't approach certain subjects, if you couldn't touch on the remnants of the Empire because it's like, well, we might do that in a movie one day, just as an example, it's like that could ruin a TV show, not being able to touch on certain things. I think it's why, and people will disagree with me, I think it's part of why Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was garbage.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because that was an example that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was supposedly in canon, right? But nothing that ever really happened in it ever crossed over into a film.
It wasn't truly significant.
It wasn't true. And they had massive events and they had all kind of crazy shit going on, but it never was significant enough to where it ever got a name drop in the movies. And although I think some of these shows will have little nods, I truly believe, based on what he said and based on the way we've seen WandaVision and how they've moved dates around with, say, Black Widow, I truly believe that you'll be able to watch any of the movies not having seen any of the shows. I do. I think that'll be the way it's structured.
But that's what I'm saying when it comes to this show specifically that we're talking about. You're setting up all these things that matter. You talk about how Falcon didn't want to be Cap. You said, Bucky's got this animosity towards Sam because of that. But none of that's going to matter in the movies.
Well, look at it like this. My assumption is that Sam will take on the mantle at the end of this show, right? I think he'll take the shield. He'll get, his Cap gear as a view. And so let's say he appears in a film. Well, as a viewer, the last movie I saw was Endgame, and at the end of that, what happens? Cap hands him the shield, and so my next time seeing him in a film, he's capped. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, that okay, so that makes
I
sense.
don't have to watch a story where he struggled with it and decided not to, and then finally got it. I saw him get handed a shield, and then now I see him as a cap. I don't need that 6 hours of content. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at what they've been doing, and look at where they're. I think they're structuring these stories in a way where you really can just not watch the shows, and you can just watch the movies, and you'll be good.
Yeah, and in that case, I guess it's better that they're setting up a West Coast Avengers. You know, especially if they're focusing on the films on like a new Avengers team of some kind, and then maybe we want them to focus on more obscure characters, because it's clear that if they focus on too many of your more popular characters, too many characters that are in movies, then what we're going to get is we're going to get an extremely we're going to get a defanged version of the Marvel universe, where you can't touch on certain subjects or characters, or you have to dance around the fact that, you know, Captain America is doing this right now, or, you know, or Spider-Man's doing this other thing.
Someone's at the door real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Like, but yeah, that becomes a problem, because that's a problem in comics themselves. In fact, if you think about it, because let's look at DC and like different company, very different company, of course. But what's the problem with almost every Justice League book they have? Oh, you can't have you can't have Superman do this because, you know, in Justice League he's doing this, you know, or you can't have him do this in Justice League because in this main book he's doing this other thing. You know, we don't want too much overlap there. We don't want to have to address this, so it has to be a neat little self-contained thing, you know, that we can hand wave, so people can only read or watch this one thing. I mean, yeah, it's good to have that consideration to some degree, but, you know, if you go too far with it, I feel like it can kind of destroy a property.
We've said that in the past, you know, as comic book readers, too many team books especially can hurt franchises because like you said, when you put all your A-listers on a team and you've invested in their solo books, well, you know, certain things won't happen now because you're reading both concurrently and they're supposedly taking place roughly at the same time. So it affects the stories of both books.
Yeah, and we have that issue where a writer, and I imagine it could happen in the movies and the shows as well, where writers writing for one character, and you know, we've seen Skrulls in here, which is a bad sign for this kind of thing. And I think you know where I'm going, Brian. The Secret Invasion storyline was the perfect example. The one that it seems like they may be doing, you know, next to some degree, was the perfect example of how bad that can get. Where, you know, it was clear that many of the books you were reading that followed individual heroes or, like, you know, two-man teams, they were going smoothly. And then they said, okay, that's great that you're writing your thing. We need you to stop that for a minute. That storyline you're doing, act like it's not a big deal, and explain to us how it fits into this Skrull invasion that we're hyping up so much.
It killed a lot of books, and there were writers that openly said that back when it happened. Because you're right, there were several storylines that were running in certain books that had you know, goals, had, you know, 12-month, you know, arcs, and when Secret Invasion came in and said tough shit, you got to tie in. That was during the tie-in era of comics. It's died down a little bit, but you know, a decade or two ago, when you hit that period of a good decade of comics where every single event, every single book had a tie-in because they wanted you to read like 80 damn books, you know.
Yeah, and that's the concern, that maybe we're in a tie-in era of movies and television.
But Zemo would be a great tie-in as far as going into Loki, which I think that could be great. But then what importance do you have to Loki as far as the movies go?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because good point. What about these shows connecting? Wanda, so far, nothing in WandaVision has in any way, shape, or form tied into Falcon and Winter Soldier. Not even a line of dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is that if these shows connect, then okay, I would be okay with that. But when you make them be standalone properties, then quit giving me names of, because this would be a great standalone property, just like Wanda would have been a great standalone property if you're not trying to carry on those characters in other properties. So you have Falcon. He's struggling, like you said, Brian, he's struggling with this idea of being Cap. Throughout this episode, that was a theme. He's struggling with the idea of being Cap. He doesn't feel that he can hold the mantle of Cap. So you give it to this other person. You basically set up U.S. Agent. So now you have U.S. Agent and Battlestar, these two West Coast Avengers. That is a great story unto itself. But what does that matter? Why does that even play in if you're not going to set up West Coast Avengers, which you did partially set up in WandaVision? But now that lessens the importance of any storyline that you're struggling with as far as Sam goes. You're struggling with Bucky at all. It doesn't matter. And that is my beef.
Speaking of U.S. Agent, it's just like for those who aren't comic fans and don't know the name, like clearly our current Captain America, that's what he's known as in the comics. In later iterations, like sometimes he is Cap, sometimes he's U.S. Agent. But I feel in this show that he's going to earn that mantle as sort of a, that's how the public is going to perceive him at some point after an event. Like something's going to go wrong, and they're not going to see him as Captain America. The way that they see them now, they're going to see him as like, well, he's just a U.S. agent. That's not Captain America. Like he's an agent of the United States.
Well, let's talk about him real quick as far as his presentation in this series. So over the whole opening is dedicated to him. He's back in his old locker room. I guess he played football, as in high school, and he joined the military, and he's this great soldier and a patriot, and he's been in all these cool missions, and we don't really get told whether or not he blipped away. I'm assuming he didn't, the way it sounded to me, but they don't specify whether he did or didn't. He has his best friend there, Hoskins, who becomes his sidekick, Battlestar. He gets interviewed, and all the great things he's ever done is talked about. People are happy, signing toys and shit. And throughout the course of the episode, he's trying to, he's given a mission, deal with the Flag Smashers. He's trying to help Falcon, and I don't know if we're going to start calling it. We'll just call him Bucky for now, until the show decides what his name will be, whether it'll be White Wolf or whatever.
They're gonna be like, no, he's Ronin now.
He's Ronin. Why not? To be completely honest. But so throughout the course of the episode, John Walker is portrayed as sort of this soldier who has a clean background, and he does good things. The only scene where you could sort of say, well, what was that? They focused on him pulling a gun and shooting a gun, but in my argument, I had zero issues with that. He's fighting super soldiers, shoot them, and as far as I'm concerned. But Cap wouldn't have done that. Let me rephrase that. Current MCU modern day Cap wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I was about to say, because
let me specify.
First movie Cap sure as hell did that.
Yes. But modern current day MCU Cap probably wouldn't have pulled a gun and shot it. But he hasn't done anything to earn, how do I word this? He hasn't done anything to make me say screw this guy. You know what I mean? Not yet, at least. What did you think about the presentation of him, how he was displayed? I agree with you, Larry. He's going to, at some point, I think, do something that's questionable. But I think he may stick around as, like you were saying, a West Coast Avenger type or something like that. I was against his casting last week. After seeing him this week, I'm more for it. I think the guy's performance was pretty good. So that's all I have to really say about him. What do you guys think?
I think that he is a good actor. I think that my issue is with the the costume itself frames his face in such an odd way.
Yes,
it does.
That it looks comical. But when you show him without the cap kind of mask, he doesn't look that weird. So it the character itself, it does a great job. He, when he's fighting the other flag smasher super soldiers, it looks believable, but the mask itself looks comical and weird. But as far as the character goes and the casting, I thought it was believable and good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, same here. I got to agree with that. And it's like they chose somebody with kind of a punchable face, but you can't fault someone for that, But they made him seem like he's a good guy. In fact, I think he's a better guy than he is in the comics, But even in the comics, he is a patriot. He does kind of believe in the things that he's saying to some degree. It's just maybe not fit to be Captain America. So and yeah, we will get to that point where Falcon is Captain America. I mean, that's obvious to me that's where we're headed. But like I think, like you're saying, Brian, they haven't done anything to really show that he doesn't really deserve that mantle or anything. In fact, they very much went through the motions to show like, yeah, this is why this guy deserves this. They had everyone, absolutely everyone, that spoke about him speak highly of him. Even Bucky's therapist was like, yeah, he's a good guy. I served with him.
Yeah, they never did anything to make me want to root against him.
Yeah,
which was surprising a little bit, but I guess if they have plans to make him sort of a anti-hero type, then maybe that's why they're going this route. I want to also clarify, I'm not 100% on this, but so Carly is the character they introduced with the Flag Smashers. So the Flag Smashers is the team, but in this version, she is Flag Smasher. She's the leader, I believe, of that crew. At least that's how they're calling it online. So she's the leader of the Flag Smashers. Now we learn that she's been working with the power brokers, and they are pissed because she stole a bunch of their shit, and they want her and her crew dead. It's wild. I will say it is wild. We're taking these obscure ass stories and combining them all. And there's something cool about that as a comic fan. You're like, whoa, I never thought I'd see this on the big screen, or the small screen. But yeah, what do you, Larry? I know you're all about some Cap storylines, Brubaker storylines, some of the old school stuff, more so than even I. Power brokers. Are you shocked, or what do you think about them being in this?
Well, actually, I think we mentioned that in the last episode. Like when I said that they were combining like 4 or 5 different stories, that it was going to be. But I thought that the power broker was just going to be the guy, the power broker. But, they decided to turn it into an organization, and in a way that does make more sense.
They better cast it, though. Their leader, they better do that right, because I have a very set look what I want it to be, but we'll see.
Absolutely. I'd like this whole thing to be very corporate for one. I think that'd be a cool direction to go with it. Like, but it's one of those things, like you said, with them combining all these properties. It's very cool, the way they've done that, and I even see like sort of a through line for potentially where they're going, and the way that all this just kind of could neatly connect. We have potentially like a storyline where there's the Proud Brokers, and they're not supplying this organization, the Flag Smashers, but the Flag Smashers stole from them, which we've taken another character and turned them into a full organization. But where did they get this serum? And, it's like, okay, clearly that ties, until whether anybody's figured it out or not, to the Isaiah Bradley story, which I'm sure we're about to touch on in a minute here. And like the experiments that were done on him, I think were used to produce the serum that the power brokers are selling. So it's like, okay, it all neatly ties together. and I believe U.S. Agent does have powers. Like the comic book version of him has powers, right? You know, I'm like,
I think the comic book, but I don't. This one appears not to.
It's like, and that's likely, in my opinion, like if they're going to touch on this, if we have time for them to touch on this, this explains how he potentially winds up, you know, getting the abilities of a super soldier. This whole power broker storyline, because it was originally his storyline. You know, in fact, yeah, we did touch on that, but we thought it would be different. Well, at least I thought it would be different as well. You know, that U.S. agent would get his abilities from the power, but they've shown him to be very much human in this. You know.
Maybe that's where they're going. I think you just hit on something. So he's on the truck and he steps up, you know, super Captain America. And he's like, "You fucked up," and he goes to fight Flag Smasher, and she knocks his ass off the bus or the truck. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe he's like, I don't measure up.
Yeah.
Cap. So he goes for the powers, and maybe that sort of corrupts him a little bit. Now that he gets, I think that's exactly where they're going to go with this.
They're going for a roid rage storyline to an extent, you know, like where he has a little bit of a temper, but it doesn't hinder him now, because they've shown hints of that, but they haven't shown that it's anything extreme, you know. And in the comics, you know, he's known for having a temper. That's like the main thing that stops him from being a good Cap, you know. So he takes that, and you know, now he's a guy that perhaps has, you know, some mental issues now, you know, like that his anger is so unmanageable because he's taken that serum that the power broker provides. So I think that'll still tie in his original origins, that he was getting his powers from the power broker.
But I think that does a great job of setting up this, you know, U.S. It does a great job with. Sorry, I'm gross. Being distracting me, but I think that does a great job of setting up their story. It does a great job of setting up U.S. Agent, but it doesn't make me care about Bucky or Sam. It makes me this whole story, that what you just said, and with how they're setting it up, makes me care 100 times more about, well, the current Cap, but U.S. Agent and Battlestar, than it makes me care about Falcon and Bucky, which hopefully they do that, because then, to me, you could set up the whole Disney Plus universe and carry this story on further and just kind of let Bucky and Falcon's story not be as important. So hopefully they do take it that direction. That to me would be way more important than how it's labeled.
Well, yeah, and I think you're right, because like given the areas that the Captain America books, especially like you mentioned, Brian, the Brubaker stuff tends to cover, this is the one show that can actually do very well in under that mandate that seemingly they have, that, you know, the movies have to be able to stand on their own, because a lot of the Captain America stuff, it's about espionage. So if it's like a lot of these events aren't known and wouldn't play into some of the major characters' plot lines anyway, you know, because it's more of a covert mission, you know, that Bucky and Cap and, you know, Bucky and Falcon, well, he's going to be Cap at that point. Like Bucky and Cap are taking on the power brokers and the Hydra remnants and whatnot. You know, it still fits. It's still, you know, be important to handle remnants of what they've dealt with, because, you know, Hydra isn't completely gone, and yet it was such a big threat, and yet you can do that in a way where you can still have your barbecue movie and touch on these important things.
We do get introduced to Isaiah Bradley, which I thought they were going to save for the end. Like, I thought that was going to be a big build up. The fact that it was just casually, they were just like, "Hey, I know this guy," and I was like, "Holy shit, we're doing this now!" So Isaiah Bradley is in the comics, and he is the real Captain America. In the comics, we're basically told that Similar to, unfortunately, what happened in the history of the United States. Black lives were not valued by the government, and they were treated like shit, and experiments and different things were done. And so that ties into the comic verse as well. And so, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a long time. Isaiah Bradley, didn't he have a brother that died, or I can't remember.
It's been such a long time ago.
It's a lot of people that were experimented on died, and I can't remember all the details. But anyways, Isaiah Bradley survived, and he had superpowers. And so I'll switch to what they told us in this. So basically, he became an agent. He was doing missions all the way up through, I think, didn't they say the 50s?
Mm-hmm.
So he was, he was sent to take out Winter Soldier. I guess they had a great fight. Winter Soldier survived, obviously, but he got his ass whooped, apparently. We know that Isaiah Bradley was. Yeah, we know he was locked up for, decades. Experiments, horrible things were done to him. And now he lives in a small house with his grandson, the Patriot, which that was another weird thing. It's like, this is a major character that it just answered the door, and it's like, you set up a major character. I hope we revisit that before the end of the series. That's not just a dangling plot thread. But what did you think, Larry Spencer, of this storyline? I'm assuming Isaiah Bradley will come back later. My guess is it's going to tie to, so Flag Smasher had said, hey, after tomorrow there's no going back, and so clearly they're making moves. Now I don't know exactly what their plan is or what the hell they're going to do. My guess is whatever it is going to be big enough to where it's going to get the attention of a lot of people, and maybe at that point Isaiah Bradley sees it and it's like, oh shit, and he's willing to reach out and maybe give some advice or help out or whatever. To be completely honest, I'd like to see him don the costume and go help. I don't know if they're going to do that. What do you guys think in terms of Isaiah Bradley, where his story is going to go?
I think that it would be very. Once again, I don't think that Falcon and Bucky will be as important throughout this series as they're labeled to be, because what you just said would be a great way for them to have to deal with Flag Smasher, Zemo, and all of this, because now you have U.S. Agent, you have Bucky, who in the comics was Cap, you have Falcon, who could be Cap, you have the Patriot, you have Isaiah, you have all of these people who are Cap in one form or another, going up against Zemo and Flag Smashers and the Power Brokers.
They've all carried the shield. Absolutely.
Yes. So you have all these people who have carried the shield, and it's almost setting up a team versus, almost like a Civil War level team battle at the end, which, God, I hope they do. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. That said, I am curious what this plan is. It's going to be so big that it's going to get the world's attention, and yet so small that we'll never see it addressed in a movie at all.
Well, I think it was you. One of us was talking about so we're doing the power broker stuff. Okay, we're giving powers away. Well, okay, will mutants even matter? If 1,000 people get superpowers,
right?
Who gives a shit about mutants? You know what I mean? Like, so whatever they do, I think is going to be reversed or not really work. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, is this potentially our way of, I don't know, because then you wouldn't get the X-Men in. I was going to say, is this our way of easing mutants into the story? Are they planning not to do any, mess with time at all? And is, basically what I'm saying is, are we keeping the X-Men stuff separate? Do we know that it's going to be integrated at this point? Because
we know X-Men we know mutants are coming. We have zero timetable. So it could be next year, it could be 3 years. We don't know. Because keep in mind, they've confirmed that they are going to bring mutants in at some point. We don't know how. We know the Fantastic Four are coming. We don't know how. We know Blade is coming. That's confirmed, which means vampires are going to be integrated. We don't know how.
Yeah, that's exactly. You know, and that's a lot of stuff to integrate. So I'm very curious how they're gonna do that. But you know, it's I was wondering, like, is this how we get mutants? Are we going to slowly integrate them where it's like, oh, the power broker, and you know, due to the power broker, people, you know, some people are having odd mutations due to that. You know, like, are we gonna have, you know, mutants due to what Wanda did in Westview, that sort of thing? You know, or are we gonna go full multiverse of madness, and is multiverse of madness going to be our explanation for those things? Where it's like, okay, yeah, the multiverse is combined, because it's hard to say at this point. But if we do it any other way, then, you know, it's like, then a multiverse storyline, it's hard to explain characters like Wolverine or Professor X, you know, because you have to have these old established characters that have been there
history.
for a while.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like,
Sinister.
I don't know. Exactly, Mr. Sinister, right? There's so many, you know, ancient or sort of old characters that have been around for a while, you know, that you can't really say that, oh no, they just became a mutant, without completely changing those characters' histories and changing them so much that they're not the same characters.
But see, that's my beef too, is that the separation of TV show / movies, this would be a great way to set up X-Men. This would be a great way to help set up Fantastic Four, just like WandaVision. But they've already established that that's not what's going to happen, which makes this all less important, which bums me out, because you have this ability to basically set up this giant, all these caps versus this organization that could help go, oh shit. I was trying to adjust the shower curtain and it fell. But you have this giant ability to set up all this stuff, but it seems like they're not gonna. And that is frustrating and somewhat irritating.
You think we're gonna get called DC fanboys this time for this critique?
I've been called everything at one point or another. We have the I got 2 more points. I guess we'll go into this. I was gonna skip it, but what the hell? Let's talk about the therapy session, because it ties into the overarching relationship of Sam and Bucky. So I guess we can focus on that. I personally am not a fan of the bickering. I love that kind of shit. I'm all, you know, the old 80s, you know, cop stories, or early 90s, where you have the 2 partners that hate each other. When done well, it's fun. To me, these 2, I don't believe that they don't like each other. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel that they legit don't like each other. And so to me, it's hard to buy into it. I even don't really agree or like their dispute. To me, it's sort of weak. There's a line at the end of the therapy session where he's like, well, you know, let's go take care of this mission, and then afterwards we'll never speak again. And I'm like, I don't believe, you know what I mean? I'm just not buying that you hate each other that much.
Yeah,
that you don't want to speak again, you know? Right.
What has happened between them that they hate each other so much that there's
nothing. They've not said it. You know what I mean? It feels forced. I don't like it. I think when they're, you know, all the action stuff's fine. I think as far as them working together is fine. It's just, it happens to be the dispute that, to me, I don't buy into. And unfortunately, that's a big part of clearly this show, at least so far. So I don't know. For me, it's not working. Larry, you alluded to it. Feels like they feel like a legit couple. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I'm like, just kiss and get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, exactly right.
God damn! Like when they get up on each other, I'm like, oh shit. Okay, is that?
Like, go ahead and put a ring on it, Anthony.
Hey man, why not?
Say what you really feel.
I don't buy that they don't like each other, and maybe they're best. You know, it could be a scenario where they're like really close friends, the two actors, and maybe that's why it's just hard for it to come off that they don't like each other. I don't know. That's me. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
or maybe it's
you
Anthony Mackie's not a good actor, and that's why it's not.
Spencer's anti
Anthony Mackie.
Very much.
I don't. He's not the best actor, but
he's far from the worst.
He's far from the worst.
I just I have a real. His are the least enjoyable parts for me in the show, and Falcon is great. Sam is not fun. It just does not. It is not believable. It's not well acted. It's not fun to watch. When he is Falcon and the Marvel-esque part, and I praised that part in the beginning when he's flying around trying to kick GSP's ass. Like, that was great. But the dialogue parts, like when you said, when they're in therapy together, it's not believable. And he is not, to me, a great. He's a less likable Will Smith. And I don't enjoy the parts where he is speaking.
That's a harsh statement. It's like, I don't like when this man speaks.
Like I said, I'm not really in as much in agreement with that. He doesn't bother me that much. But I'll say this note, and then Larry, you chime in. The Suicide Squad sequel, the trailer just dropped a day ago, and I thought it was a fine trailer. In it, there's just a couple scenes where Idris Elba's character and John Cena's character are playing off each other. And there's sort of that back and forth, I believed in that dynamic more than I have in this so far. Now, Idris Elba is a, top tier actor.
Oh, yeah.
And, John Cena was playing the comedy angle. But their interactions I was more invested in that in a trailer than I have been in Sam and Bucky so far. So
I think the problem is what they're basing this off of, and they're basing their relationship off of like 1 to 2 scenes where Anthony Mackie seems to distrust Bucky, while he's brainwashed. But he's brainwashed, he's been through a lot of shit since then, and we don't know if he's ever have we had a scene where he prior to this series where they've interacted as people, outside of that
scene I even remember these two talking was when they fought Spider-Man. Remember in the Civil War?
See, I forgot that even happened.
So even in that scene, all the focus was on Peter Parker's one-liners, which were decent. He had a few funny jokes. They had a little fight there. That's all I remember at all between those two.
Yeah, and there doesn't seem to be a good reason, like you both said, for them to hate each other this much. He doesn't seem to be in a place where he thinks Bucky is gonna like snap and go Winter Soldier again or anything. So I don't see a reason for it. It doesn't bother me a great deal. Like I said, I'm not bothered by Anthony Mackie's acting. I think he's okay. He is one of those actors where, as we mentioned before, he always kind of seems like he's playing the same dude every time. But it doesn't really bother me. But as far as their relationship, it does seem the hostility seems a little forced.
Yes. Zemo, that's my last point. Wonderful introduction at the end. Building him up. He's in prison. He's locked up. So that answers. So I still don't know if he blipped away or not. You know, that they didn't say that, but clearly at this point in time, he is still being held prisoner. Now it looks like a much. You know, last time we saw him, they had him in this chamber. You know, and he was all secured because of how dangerous he is. In this, he's just in a cell. So we're not completely. We don't know yet, but it looks like they're going to get him for help. Now the question is, does this? There's two scenarios. Scenario one, he's going to work with them directly. Scenario two, this plays into some big plan he already has running. What do you guys think?
It's Zemo, so he's playing them, and in fact, I'm pretty sure. I'm also pretty sure that most that general audiences just kind of don't remember the character, which is why I'm surprised, yet pleased that the character's returned, because I know, like, we all liked him as a villain because he was a very effective villain. He fought a bit differently. He played more mind games with the Avengers than anybody else. But yeah, they definitely set up this little Hannibal Lecter-like opening with him in the chessboard. So I feel like he has a plan, and this is part of it. That he expects that someone's going to reach out to him at this point.
I think that it's way more likely that he is the one that orchestrated this entire thing, almost Joker-esque from, Arkham, than anything else. To me, thinking that Flag Smasher and the Power Brokers and all this are, doing this all on their own accord is much less likely than anything else. I think that he is way more involved in every aspect of this than they have showed us so far.
Absolutely, and and that makes it feel very much like a Brubaker Cap storyline. Like, I know those who don't read the comics, you've heard us mention that name a few times, but if you have any interest in reading comics, particularly Captain America ones, you want to look for that name on the book Brubaker, because he writes some good stuff. But if what you're saying is right, Spencer, then this is very much a Brubaker storyline where, like, potentially even from prison, he's plotted all this and set up all these little chess pieces. And, we'll see how that plays out, Zemo can be such a complicated character that we're really going to need to see him and get some lines of dialogue before we, like, if they're writing him right, before we even get a hint at what his plan is. Because his schemes tend to be pretty complicated.
Well, and that, as good as he can be written, is my fear that the MCU pulling away from the Disney Plus universe will lessen lessen his significance a great deal, whereas he is such a great villain that the importance will be severely diminished by the end of this, and I hope not.
It's unfortunate. I think he's one of the best. I've said this. He's one of the top. There's like the top 3 villains in the MCU. I would rank him, and yet a lot of audiences didn't like him, or he didn't, click with people. A lot of people thought, oh, he didn't really do anything, and I'm like, you're not. He didn't punch anybody, but you're not looking at the bigger picture, and it was frustrating. I remember reading those reviews, like, what movie did you watch? He took down the Avengers. He divided them. Matter of fact, there's a line of dialogue in this show, this episode, that reflects what Zemo did when Sam's like, hey, I was on the run and we were fucking hiding for 2 years. Zemo did that.
Yeah.
He broke the Avengers apart. He weakened Earth. Therefore, Thanos came in and did what he did. All that, Zemo did that. And when you think about what he accomplished, it is pretty significant. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how they portray him in here. I hope it's a big deal. I hope we're setting up a Thunderbolts eventually. I hope we get all those things. He is a great character, especially when he's written properly. And
yeah, the rest of the world will like him more when he puts on his purple ski mask.
Yeah, they need him to punch somebody. He's gonna get powers and punch somebody, and there you go.
And they're gonna be like, "Oh, he has a sword, and he does all kinds of things, you know." He has magics.
So I'll leave it there. I have a few thoughts, but we're running late, and I doubt anybody's. I think our last video got 39 views.
It's just us now.
Yeah.
Say what you want.
It literally. So I'll leave it. I'll leave it there. Any other things before we end this?
No, because all the things would take so much longer.
Right. Good. I could get all Charlie from Always Sunny and pin some strings together.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna wrap this up. If you're still listening, thanks. We appreciate it. I know these reviews. I'll just go ahead and say, if you legitimately are still listening, these reviews will probably be more like this, just because we're well versed in the comics, and it's not just us analyzing a 40-minute show. It's us analyzing 50 years of continuity, and that's just the the way it is. So
yeah, you can't help.
Yeah,
and without drawing it out, it's us piecing together things that they have done throughout the MCU and where it could possibly go because of our knowledge of the comics. It's a combination of everything, which tends us to be a little bit more long-winded about it than other stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, we're talking about storylines that have gone on and continued since before any of us were born, and we're not exactly young anymore. So so these are old properties with storylines that are like I said, older than us, and a lot of things just tied together so closely that you can't help that when they bring in certain characters and certain properties that you're like, oh my god, what does this mean? Are we getting the Young Avengers out of this? Are we getting the West Coast Avengers? Are we getting like with the previous TV shows? Like, are we getting Heroes for Hire? Which we essentially got. I didn't like what. Well, I'm not even going to go into that because that's a whole other.
That's
You're about to double the size of this video.
But all right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. Bye.